Welcome to Marin Voices and Views. With Lawrence A. Strick, I'm Peter B. Collins. Our second guest in the following segment is former Marin County Assemblyman Bill Bagley, and he's got some great stories to tell us. Larry, let's introduce our first guest.
Well, I want to welcome Lawrence Bragman to Marin Voices and Views. Larry grew up in Milwaukee and still carries his Midwest in his heart. He's a graduate of University of Pennsylvania and the prestigious University of San Francisco School of Law, where we were classmates. He's lived in Marin for over 20 years. He's a practicing attorney with an active civil practice representing individuals who are injured. He's a long-term member of Consumer Attorneys of California and a past president of Marin County Trial Lawyers Association. He's had a string of great victories for the people he represented. In 2003, he was elected to the Fairfax City Council. He served as mayor and is now serving as the vice mayor. Welcome.
Thank you.
In addition, Larry is on the board of Marin Community Broadcasting.
Correct.
And I wanted you to just talk a little bit about that and your involvement with this program, which Peter and I are having great fun
This is a
hosting this show.
great facility here.
It's a pleasure and an honor to be here. This studio is the culmination of many years of effort by a lot of people. The Marin Telecommunications Agency, which I serve as Fairfax representative, along with the local community, worked for many years in a collaborative effort to get funding for this community media center, which we managed to do when we signed a new franchise agreement for our cable television franchise about 4 years ago. And so, you know, I'm living the dream that we long planned, so it's great to be here.
I got in trouble once for referring to Viacom as the black snake that crawls into your living room and keeps demanding more money. But it's good to see that we got something really worthwhile and good for the community out of the renegotiation of the cable contract.
Absolutely, absolutely. And they are using our public rights away to deliver their product. And so what we wanted to do is get something back for the community that affords them the opportunity to bring their product, good, bad, and indifferent, into their homes. And so here we are. So this is a great project for the community.
And this is not the indifferent or the bad. This is the
No,
good, right? I just want to clarify that.
Absolutely.
Let's get serious here.
This is the crown jewel of our franchise, and I think it's going to be a huge asset for the community, for young people, for community groups, for government. I mean, we are entering a digital economy and a digital age of communication, and this studio is the touchstone for our community to really take advantage of that and learn everything it needs to join, you know, the digital age.
Larry, let's talk about Fairfax. 2.1 square miles of nirvana right here in Marin.
The center of the universe.
Well, every local government is struggling now, mostly because of the problems of the state. And in our next segment, we'll talk with Bill Bagley a little bit about some of that history, including Proposition 13. But you have difficult choices to make, limited resources. It's very hard to raise taxes and generate new revenue. Your town hall is closed on Fridays as a result of cutbacks. What is it like to serve at a time like this and make these critical but very difficult trade-offs?
Well, I mean, to use a cliche, it's challenging, but it also, with every challenge, there's an opportunity. Well, what's the opportunity here? The opportunity in Fairfax has been to create a community culture, a political culture of empowerment and engagement for the residents in Fairfax. We run our meetings open. We welcome residents to come down and tell us what's right and what's wrong, and to be treated respectfully and to act on what they bring to the table. So that's a big part of the story of Fairfax. And by doing that, what we've been able to do is to gain the support of the people enough to where they supported a revenue measure. In 2008, Measure I was passed overwhelmingly. Something like 77% of the folks in Fairfax voted in favor of that. And I think it was somewhat of an endorsement of the way they think we're running the town, that they do see the benefits of the public economy and what it brings to the town and what it brings to the quality of life for the community. So that's a big part of it. And I think, we are entering an age of cynicism and alienation, and we need to address that. And we need to make fundamental changes at the state and federal level as far as throwing the money changers out of the temple, trying to create a competitive system of public financed elections to compete with big money donors, to open up our electoral process to things like instant runoff voting that gives people more choices, more voices, and to give people hope that they're not just on the roller coaster of the private economy without seatbelts on, waiting to get thrown off. So I think we do need to give people choices, to give people options that they can pursue to create a better society. One of the other things on a state level that I think we need to do, and what the Green Party has been talking about, and the Democrats in other states, is creating a state chartered bank, so that when the state needs to go out and raise money for projects, for infrastructure, we've got 30 years of deferred maintenance of infrastructure locally, state and federal, that we don't have to go hat in hand to Wall Street and pay them, extortionate rates on bonds, that we can use our cash flow that we get from our tax stream, even when it gets diminished in a recession like we're in now. We can leverage that with a state chartered bank, and the state of North Dakota's had one for years.
That's right.
It's one of the only states in the country that actually has a surplus right now in its budget. So
That's correct. Mm-hmm.
It's not like we're reinventing the wheel. So I think there's a lot of things that need to be put on the table that aren't being put on the table because of the closed electoral system, big money donors. All those things have to be addressed, and we have to start talking about them.
So in Fairfax, I hear you asking the people to continue to engage and become involved and stay
Absolutely.
involved. What opportunities are there for the local homeowner, the people walking around the street with the merchants, to do that?
Well, I mean, it's not just coming to our meetings. Of course, we want people to come to meetings. One of the things we want to do actually with the Community Media Center is to get our meetings streamed live so that people can engage at home. A lot of people are inhibited, they're tired. They don't want to come down to see a meeting, or they need to take care of their kids or whatever. If we could stream our meetings live to the community, they would at least be able to engage and see what's going on, and then they can pick and choose. A lot of it is that people you've got media filters that are operating throughout our society, but even here in Marin, you've got very little, or limited, I should say, media opportunities. The Community Media Center, public live streaming of meetings, universal broadband access, these are things that we need to be doing to move our country and Fairfax forward. We have numerous boards and commissions in Fairfax. We try to reach out to all people, all sides of the political spectrum. And I can't, Fairfax has a reputation as, sort of its own little universe of like-minded robots. And that's not true. It's a very diverse population, just like the rest of Marin. There's all sides of the political spectrum in Fairfax.
Larry, Fairfax is a member of the Marin Energy Authority, and if I'm right, you've purchased the deep green option.
Correct.
Tell me how you see that in just a minute or so. How do you see the vision for the Marin Energy Authority, and why does Fairfax support it?
Well, historically, we were there at the creation. Rebecca Collins who was one of the originators of the idea, brought it to the town council. The town council of Fairfax has long been a proponent of public energy. Marin Energy is the public option. And what it does is it allows us to focus our public revenue stream towards not only purchasing greener power, but creating competition in our electrical network that PG&E has had a monopoly on. Competition's healthy. Competition's going to improve service. Ultimately, the revenue stream that we create with Marin Energy, just shifting ratepayer money towards that public option, will enable us to leverage that money and build the local generating capacity here in Marin, which is mostly going to be solar, so that we can create our own energy, so that we don't have to depend on building huge power lines coming in from, Montana or New Mexico, so that we can have distributed power. There are studies that demonstrate Marin has enough solar capacity to be self-sufficient. Now, obviously, it's not sunny out all the time, but you have to look at sort of the gross picture that we do have the capacity right here in Marin to be self-sufficient energy-wise. So the long-term picture is that revenue stream, we leverage that revenue stream. There's a program called AB 811, which will enable homeowners to deduct their investment in solar on their property tax. It's a great deal for folks. So that gives them an incentive to put in the solar capacity that we need. Another thing Marin Energy is going to do is going to increase the tariff that's paid to homeowners who have solar to encourage it.
Larry Bragman, Fairfax Town Council, Vice Mayor, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks a lot.
Joining us now on Marin Voices and Views is a man who represented Marin and Sonoma counties for 14 years in the state assembly during the golden years in Sacramento. Bill Bagley has a freeway named after him, and you see the sequence of the Rainbow Tunnel in our opening shot here on this program. He also served as President Ford's first chairman of the Commodity Futures Trading Exchange, and he also was a regent of the University of California, served on the Public Utilities Commission here in California as well. He's written about his experiences in this new book. Bill Bagley joins us now. Bill, good to see you.
I'm happy to be here.
And Bill and I are members of a secret lunch group called Sacramento Seminars, so I've had the pleasure of knowing him for over 15 years now. And Bill, you've made signal contributions to state and local politics. And I also consider you an endangered species, the moderate Republican.
An evangelical moderate. It's an anomalous expression.
Well, tell us a little bit about when government worked in California, because many people have no recollection of that. And you supplied me with some history here, a report that was written by the Ford Foundation that said that California was the #1 legislature in the nation in 1969.
That's true. We had no aisles. I had Al Alquist, a Democrat from San Jose, my seatmate till the day he died. He called me his seatmate. We had no partisan caucus position papers. There was no partisan caucus staff. Today, the partisan caucus staff writes edicts, and voting is by rote. They simply follow the caucus staffs. They've abdicated. Also, with term limits, you simply don't know your colleagues. 2/3 of your colleagues change every 2 years. Freshmen are elected speakers, have no idea what government's all about. No significant idea. They're elected speakers. They don't even know 2/3 of their colleagues that preceded them. It is ungodly, and it's a sad, sad story. The only current solution, we may get to this, is the open primary, which is on the June ballot.
Bill, firstly, I love the book. And one question I have about the book, I noticed there's a picture of Willie Brown in here. He's wearing some slacks that makes him look like Rodney Dangerfield in Caddyshack, for God's sakes. Is he going to sue you for this? What's the situation?
Well, he's told me not to. He told me to please throw away the negative, but I already had some positives made of it. It's autographed by him. And there's Jerry Gillum of the LA Times and Bill Bagley in my hunting clothes. It was Willie's first golf game ever. This was again when we were all colleagues. Lobbyists provided the fees, and actually they dressed Willie in that outfit and brought him out in his first golf game.
Anyone who dressed Willie like that, he ain't getting his vote. But let me ask you this. In your book, you mentioned Proposition 9, which was the money proposition in California. Yes. You mentioned Proposition 13, which is the tax issue in California. And you mentioned Proposition 140, which really is term limits.
Yep.
These three things, at least as I read your book, really are screwing up California politics.
Fair. Go ahead.
Each one of them, though, is considered a holy grail. No one who's elected is going to come after any of those. So what are we going to do?
Very quickly, what we have to do is get rid of term limits, at least have 12-year terms for both houses. It takes 5 or 6 years to understand what's going on in a $100 billion budget. It takes 5 or 6 years to learn who you can trust and with whom you want to work. After 4 years, you're a lame duck in the assembly. So that's solution number one. Solution number two is collegiality has got to come back to Sacramento. What Proposition 9 did is it said you can no longer spend more than $10 a month on legislators and staff. So all of the nice dinners and lunches where we had bipartisan groups meeting together are gone.
But there's that cafeteria on the 5th floor. You can get a burger for $3.
That's true, and Jerry Brown said 2 burgers and a Coke is $10.
But you mentioned trust just now, and then when I was reading your book, you mentioned trust on page 13, 41, 70. I mean, every damn page you're mentioning trust. I couldn't help but you believe that these guys just don't trust each other. And then I started thinking, who do they trust? Do they only trust the people who are paying for them, the lobbyists and the special interests?
And that's the whole point. It used to be for $20 dinners, you'd have a half a dozen or a dozen or 2 dozen members, bipartisan, every night. People got together and played together and stayed together. Today, instead of dinners, it's $4,000 a night, annual, ongoing, all year long, dinners, fundraising dinners for $4,000 rather than 20. That's what's happened in California, and that's the result of political reform.
Now, Bill, I wonder if you would compare 2 movie stars turned governor. I wasn't here in California when Ronald Reagan served 2 terms in Sacramento, but I have suffered through almost 2 terms of Arnold Schwarzenegger, and I consider him a failure. He did not fix the state's fiscal problems. He made them worse by grandstanding on the car tax, and then he presided over gridlock, where Grover Norquist, who extracted the no tax increase pledge from almost every Republican in the legislature, basically held sway. And so we couldn't fix the problems here. What's the difference between these 2 actor governors?
First 2 years of the Reagan administration was an abomination. He came to Sacramento wanting to clean house with a broom. Same thing happened to Arnold. Gonna blow up all of the boxes. Mm-hmm. After Reagan got there for 2 or 3 years, he began, frankly, to realize he could be a candidate for president. He began to work with us. I personally negotiated for 6 weeks a $2 billion tax increase that he signed on a $10 billion budget. It's a 20% tax increase that Ronald Reagan signed. We had no problem getting 2/3 votes. We worked together. We knew each other. Of course, there were people that we didn't trust, but we knew who they were.
Good point.
And so how do you evaluate Schwarzenegger?
He started off as after his first couple of years, as post-partisanship. He was going to be ecumenical. Mm-hmm. One problem occurred. The Pete Wilson leftover staffers took over in his office and forced him to the right. And then when he tried to become ecumenical, he didn't make it. I don't blame him. I blame the gridlock in the legislature on all those causes that we talked about.
Mm-hmm.
Interestingly, you mentioned a freshman becoming speaker, and I know you're talking about Speaker Perez.
And Bass before him.
Speaker, when I went to the speaker's swearing in, and one of the things that everyone was mentioning during his ceremony was that he's going to be there 5 full years. He's going to be there 5 full years being speaker, and we could use him and his leadership. What do you have to say to something like 5 full years of a
First of all, he'll be a lame duck after 3 years, looking for another position. People in the Senate now run for the Assembly, which was an abomination in our days. He will be a lame duck, and he will quit or be thrown out in about 3 or 4 years, because in order to have another freshman elected who might serve about 4 years, it takes 4 years to understand what is now a $80 billion budget's all about. And parenthetically, the budget has been cut 20% in the last 3 years. It was $100 billion, it's now 80.
Bill, I referenced your service as a regent on the UC board. You're a product of UC Berkeley and their law school, and they published your book. We've had a substantial disinvestment in higher education, and I have heard you evangelize about the support from the general fund for higher education and the investment that that represents. We've seen a huge disinvestment. That must trouble you a great deal.
And it did while I was on the Board of Regents. The general fund of the university, of the state, supported the general fund of the university 60-some-odd% when I was in office. It's now 25%. Even worse, we didn't have tuition during the 60s, 70s, during the 50s and 60s. We had an incidental fee 50 years ago of about $100 a year. Room and board was about $120. Inflation has presented room and board with a figure of about $1,200. It's 1,000%. Tuition has increased 10,000% in 50 years. 10,000% versus about 1,000% inflation. Mm-hmm. That is obscene without any redeeming social value whatsoever.
Can we fix it?
Once we get a budget in balance, and once people begin to believe in the state of California and paying for what they want to receive, you mentioned a pledge not to raise any taxes under any circumstances. Because of the right-wing effect on the Republican Party today, you have almost required statement that I will abdicate in advance in order to get nominated.
Bill, you write in your book, which I thought was great, Ronald Reagan was not a conservative governor. To his credit, he turned his back on the right wing by signing the most liberal choice bill in the United States. He endorsed the Equal Rights Amendment and increased state income and sales tax by $2 billion to finance a $10 billion budget.
All of that's true.
In this 21st century, there may be another California right-wing revolt, but for naught. Times and the political culture have changed drastically since '58. Party ideologues in today's California are just counterproductive, angry losers. Can the Republican Party be a player here in California, or is it gone?
It's going farther and farther, further and further to the right as we speak. The Tea Party people, just a couple of days ago, new senator was elected from Massachusetts. Tea Party people say, we're going to take him out in 2 years because he's not adhering to our party line. The parties will fight the open primary, and they're going to lose. And when you get an open primary in Marin County, there's no sense in trying to vote on a Republican because nobody can. We have 20-some-odd% Republican registration. But with an open primary, Republicans will have a voice. They can vote for the more conservative Democrat. In Orange County, the Republicans, who ordinarily will nominate a right-winger, will be affected by an open primary where everybody gets a chance to vote. The spectrum will be broadened, and you will get, over a period of time, more and more moderates elected to the legislature. And that's what I look forward to when I'm 90 years old.
You know, I got to take issue with you. My concern with the open primary is that it's a license for the corporate interests to pick the candidate in each district that they want by funding that candidate so that they get the person who is most interested in propagating their particular agenda.
Absolutely untrue. Absolutely untrue. Today, with the districts absolutely separated, you invested either on the Republican side or the Democratic side. What you do is you nominate a liberal Democrat, and that person is in office as long as he or she can be. Look at what's happened here in Marin County with Lynn Woolsey. In an open primary, you'd have everybody, declined estate voters, Democrats, Republicans, all able to vote for one of two top candidates. So you're going to get a middle-of-the-road candidate in every place. And it has nothing to do with who's funding them. The funding goes on anyway.
Gentlemen,
Today.
we'll have to leave it there for another day. Bill Bagley, thank you for joining us. His new book is California's Golden Years, When Government Worked and Why. Thank you, Bill.
You're welcome. Glad to be here.
Thanks for coming.
I'll be back.
Good, good. We want you. Peter, it was great having Bill Bagley and Larry Bragman here today. Get a little bit of the old style and the new style of politician here in Marin.
A lot of great people here in Marin, and you can see all of our shows archived at our website at marinvoicesandviews.com. And tell your friends, that's an easy way to share the program with them.
And Peter, we're not done with these local politicians. We're going back to the fishbowls and picking out a name so that we invite another local elected here for our next show. Who do we got?
Okay. Frank Berto of the Sleepy Hollow Fire District. Watch out, Frank. We're going to be calling you and inviting you as our next guest on this program.
Wake up, buddy. Wake up. We're calling you.
Well, thanks for watching, and join us again next time for Marin Voices and Views.
Thanks.
With Larry Strick, I'm Peter B. Collins.